I've spoken earlier about the importance of connecting information systems and information technology to what functions and information flows they are supporting. For that reason, when talking about manufacturing planning and production, I'm not always such a big fan of the term ERP. Let me explain why. What I like about this overview is that you can see how ERP developed from manufacturing. First, Material Requirements Planning (MRP), which encompasses inventory, purchasing, and scheduling. Then Control and Labor was included to create Manufacturing Resource Planning, often called MRP2. With this, you can still see a connection to manufacturing and the Purdue model. From this point on, I feel the term ERP gradually started to dilute meaning and becoming an quote-unquote everything system. It started to encompass things like supply chain, customer relations, knowledge management, business intelligence, etc. The issue with this is that it gets difficult to talk about what ERP is, and even more importantly, what it is not. If we look at this overview of modules in SAP, we can try to roughly map the modules over to the IS-95 functional model, which shows functions and information flows between levels 3 and 4. It could look something like this. There are two issues with the term ERP here. The first is that things like human capital management and finance doesn't fit that well for supporting any of the function in the IS-95 model. The second thing is, I've placed the modules a bit more on the outside of the circle. This is to demonstrate that typically there are other more well-suited systems to support more detailed functions within level 3. For example, on level 4 you may be more concerned about the fact that your plant has 1000 of raw material A, which should be sufficient to produce 100 of product A. On level 3, you're more interested in the fact that you can find 50 of material A on shelf 105, 200 of material A on shelf 315, etc. On level 4, you're concerned with what creates value, while on level 3, you're concerned with how to go forth with creating that value. To be clear, I am in no way trying to talk ERP systems down. They're the backbone of your company. I do, however, think it's important not to overload your back. I'm going to move away from the Purdue model for a second and look at this model from Michael Greaves' book on product lifecycle management. Although this focuses on how PLM, CRM, and SCM integrates with ERP, I think it illustrates ERP's role quite well. One approach to this model is to think that you have customers, suppliers, and products that you sell, and you need to harmonize it in some way. Everything up to the point where there is some kind of development, there are typically other systems that are better than ERP. For example, developing new products or new customers, that is the strength of PLM and CRM. But when you come to some kind of realization, and you need to coordinate and harmonize across the different business areas, that is when ERP shines. For example, you've developed a new product and created a new article number in your PLM, and you want to source materials to different suppliers, or you have made a sale of that article and you need to set an order. I think this model can be expanded on to apply, for example, asset lifecycle management, plant engineering, production control, project management, MES, PPC, CMMS, etc. I think it's valuable to understand how ERP fits within a complexity model and how other systems do as well. On the right here, we have Dave Snowden's sense-making model Kinevin. On the left, we have an overly simplified and partially incorrect version of it, where we have divided it into ordered and unordered systems. In ordered systems, you can get stuff done. In unordered systems, you need to figure stuff out. This is maybe why I think ERP can be somewhat alluring, especially for management. ERP shines in ordered systems and gives a sense of control, while other systems are more about helping to figure stuff out. This is of course an overly simplified perspective, but I do think it helps to understand the value of different types of systems. I often get the sense that ERP is being used for everything and being seen as an everything system. And maybe that was a valid argument 20, 30 years ago when equipment and systems were more isolated and humans could smooth over whatever shortcomings there were. But as competition and technological development have increased, automation and the amount of interfaces have increased and created more complexity. What we've actually since the inception of ERP is not an increase of ordered systems, but an increase of unordered systems. More often than not, I see that businesses are trying to solve this increase in complexity with overloading ERP systems and a lot of resources spent on non-value adding activities such as data entry, where other systems within OT and ET can be better suited. Okay, I think we'll cut it here. I hope this can help refresh your perspective on ERP and how it can work together with other areas. If you have some thoughts, feedback, please leave them in the comment section. And until next time.